Welcome to the Book Angle, where we talk about books from different angles and sometimes go in circles. I'm Anna, this is Sabrina, and today we are going to be talking about The Assassin's Blade for our Throne of Glass book clubs. So if you've not read this book, there will be massive spoilers because we are doing a book club discussion of this after reading it. And you will be able to find our previous book club discussions in the playlist for this. So
Yeah, we're on our third month of finishing this. We're doing one book a month for our book club. And for this particular book, we read Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and then Assassin's Blade per Sarah J Maas's reading order suggestion. And we did that because that was what she suggested. It was my first time reading it. But that leads us into our first question. There's a ton of controversy about the reading order. And you've actually read the whole series. I've
mm-hmm.
only read the first three. But when do you think Assassin's Blade should be read? Assuming it has to be read because it is a novella that just provides more context. It's not necessarily a part of the series, so it has to be read. When would you read it?
I still believe that when I read it the first time, I read it after Heir of Fire and before Queen of Shadows. I
Hmm.
still hold that that is the most makes the most sense to me,
Okay.
because Heir of Fire does not bring in any of these characters that we learn about in these prequel novellas. Queen of
Hmm.
Shadows does. And that's kind of where we start to see the trickle in of these characters. They don't all show up in Queen of Shadows, but we learn about like a lot of things that were happening to her in Rifthold and with Arobyn, and he becomes very important in Queen of Shadows, and it's
Mm.
a lot. It takes place a lot in Rifthold itself. So
Okay.
it was very like, okay, so I'm getting set up for what I'm going to learn about next. Like, we're going to jump forward in time to where we are currently with these characters. Heir of Fire doesn't really have anything to do with anything that we learn in these prequels, so I don't understand why she suggests reading it before Heir of Fire. Um, I could see reading it first. I just
Hmm.
don't think that it's a good place to start because it is assuming that you already know who Celaena is, and have some understanding of who she is and what the world is like, what's going on in the world, and that the magic has not existed for 10 years and all of that. So that's my personal preference.
Yeah, so I haven't read the remaining books in the series, but so this book has five novellas in it. And the first two, I was like, why is this important? Like, I couldn't understand how it related to the story. But then the last three, they did provide some good context about who Celaena is, who betrayed her, what happened, and then how did she eventually end up in the Endovier salt mine prison. Um, so I felt like those things were kind of helpful, but for me, I was kind of like, okay, because one of the big things, again, we talked about spoiler alert, we learned that Celaena was in love with someone named Sam, and Sam dies. Well, you see how her and Sam fall in love in this book. And you also see, that she takes a mission that eventually leads her to imprisonment. And for me, it was so hard to get into some of these stories because I knew how they were going to end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I couldn't root for Celaena to be like, ooh, like, is this assassin going to find a way out of this problem? No, I knew that she was going to be imprisoned. Oh, are her and Sam going to be endgame? No, I know that he dies. And so I think the three novellas that I thought were most important, knowing what happened really bothered me. But at the same time, it's exactly what you said. If I hadn't read Throne of Glass first, I'd be like, why, who is this? And why do none of these novellas really connect together, with the exception of the last three? The
Mm-hmm.
last three are the only ones that actually seem to connect. So maybe I'll feel differently after or whenever we get to Queen of Shadows, because I'm probably not going to remember any of these people if they show up later.
Mm-hmm.
So, question.
Hmm.
In Air of Fire, that's the one where people start to not like Kale, right?
Queen of Shadows.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, well, maybe she wanted to show a contrast between Celaena's love for Sam and Kale.
Yeah, it's Queen of Shadows.
Okay, well, I would love to know why she wants it this
Yeah.
way.
Why is this the author's suggestion?
Yeah. Like, but then again, so many people argue about it because
Hmm.
I said my suggestion just like last night to a friend, and she was like, but I'm reading it as the way of Selena starting to remember these things. So it's almost like we're seeing her replay all the moments that led her to where she's at now, like a memory. So that was my friend's perspective that if I look at it as Selena's just recalling how did I get to this point, I'm looking through her memories. So there's a big controversy. I personally think it either needs to be read first, but that's all I know right now, or maybe not at all. It's just kind of a context filler. So, but yeah. So I guess we're not passionate about this.
No.
We won't be following the fandom of being that that way. But speaking of the five novellas, which one stood out to you the most? Why?
um so I feel like the healer story and the Red Desert story were probably my, if I had to pick a favorite, it'd be close between the two. Um because I really like Irene Towers. We meet her in later book. And I really like her character as we get to know her more later.
Mhm.
So I liked that little snippet of getting to see her early on.
Mhm.
I still feel like we didn't need this story, because it's such a little tiny blip, and we just like focused on it for so long. I'm like, I don't understand why this was written necessarily.
Mhm.
However, I also don't understand why, um, the desert story, like we never see Ansel again. Um, if I maybe I'm wrong, maybe we do, and I just completely forgot. But I have no memory of anything in that story ever being relevant ever again. I could be
Okay.
wrong. I could be wrong because it has been 3 years since I read this series. But those were actually the most interesting to me because they didn't involve Sam. And I was the least interested in getting connected to Sam because I know that he dies. And I'm like, I don't want to know you. I don't want to know your
Yeah.
deal. I don't want to see you guys develop a relationship because I know it's going to end and it just is like going to be painful. So I want to be disconnected.
Yeah.
So
Fair.
that's kind of my reasoning.
So my favorite one was also actually the desert one because I thought there was a lot of things that I actually did enjoy about it. I felt like in Throne of Glass, I didn't understand how did Celaena even get her training? How is she good at this? Why is she good at this? And I don't know if this was still as like thorough of an explanation as I wanted, but I got something. I got to see the training happening. And something that I also liked was when she was looking at the mute assassin and comparing it to Arobyn, she's like, this is different. Like, wow, like he treats his people well. Like, and I guess if he's making that much money from everyone killing people, I mean, it's a profitable business, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good employer. He treats his people well. Um, and I actually wasn't necessarily expecting to see Ansel again. Maybe we will, but I was thinking that the only reason why that was so important was because maybe the mute assassin or his son was going to come back again and like maybe show preference to Celaena because, oh, well, you saved my dad's life. And also the mute assassin was happy that she let Ansel go. So I actually wasn't expecting to see Ansel again, but I was expecting to see the maybe the mute assassin and the son again, and I guess I won't. Um, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but yeah, it was the most interesting because we got to see, I think, some inner conflict with Celaena, which we don't get much with her, because she's kind of has a big head sometimes. Um, and the training aspect of it. And I just thought the mute assassin was really interesting. I wanted to know more about him.
Hmm.
So, so speaking of the differences between mute assassin and Arobyn, I know that you've read this before, but were you surprised that Arobyn betrayed Celaena? And how did that influence the way that you viewed him or Celaena?
I think that it wasn't surprising to me the first time around reading it. And I don't think I was like, oh yeah, I totally saw that coming. It just was like, yeah, kind of makes sense. This guy's been grooming her since she was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And as an adult, it's very obvious that he's been grooming her,
Yeah.
and manipulating her psychologically. Um, she is very dependent on him, even if she doesn't realize it. And we see that by her like returning to him even after he's been horrible to her, um, and not wanting to set off on her own for a while. Um, Even though, and then like even returning to him after Sam dies. Um, and it's like, girl, this guy is evil, and you are still like, she still sees him as a father figure, sort of. But then we also get this like, is he a lover? Kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
like this undefined thing that like they have a connection. She feels tied to him in some way. Very creepy pedophile groomer
Very creepy
vibes.
pedophile.
So not surprising when he acts like a creepy pedophile. And um yeah, I feel like if this was a more adult book, if we were getting more of like she was a more adult character, or like at least a more adult like writing style, maybe we could have delved more into that and like gotten that more clearly seen or more clearly explored, and like in a more mature way. This is a young adult where she's kind of glancing off of like, you can see it's there but not really delving into that.
Hmm.
um at least not here. um so I feel like I don't even remember what the original question was. I feel like Sarah J
Were you
Maas,
surprised and did it influence how you felt about the characters?
well, she has a tendency to kind of like bring up these dark themes and then
Mm.
not actually deal with them. And kind of like slavery is a big part of this story. um and we know that Celaena doesn't agree with it, but we really never get like a whole lot of like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like we're not approaching it in a mature level. Just kind of, it exists in the world and you have to accept that, and we're moving on. And yeah, this guy's a pedophile groomer and that's how it is, and we're moving on. And it's like, I don't necessarily want to sit in these things, but I do feel like we have to acknowledge them as bad. And I don't think she's acknowledging them as bad in a very clear way. Maybe that's my problem, is that we're
Yeah.
not getting this is bad in a clear way, especially as a young adult novel. I feel like it should be a little bit more clear that Arobyn is the bad guy and he's very bad.
Yeah.
So maybe
I
that's
I see what you're saying when it comes to Arabin. I'll answer the question and then I'll go back to like
yeah.
because I have a thought on your other point with the slavery, but I was not surprised in the slightest that he was the bad guy. Because it does make sense. And there were many instances. So talking about your point where Selena's like father figure, boss, almost lover, like kind of like she's trying to figure out what is this man to me?
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, oh, maybe she's gonna realize that this is gross because it comes up a lot, y'all. Like, we're not just like I remember distinctly at least three times where she says that Arabin felt like he had like a claim on her, but also father figure and also like you're in charge of my contracts. And so it's just gross lines are being like,
She
yeah,
specifically says he could be a lover, but it's never been defined.
Right.
And
And it's
it's
not
like,
that
ooh.
they haven't like kissed because she has her first kiss with Sam. Because at first I was like, ooh, maybe there's like gross stuff happening. But we do learn that has not happened. So I think it's just icky. And so I was expecting for it to come up later where she's like when she leaves for good and she's like, because of all the bad stuff that you have done, but also because of the way that you have treated me. And we don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think his betrayal did not surprise me when it came to Arobyn, and even his explanation where he's like, I give her away because I don't like to share what's mine. Like that possessiveness. It did influence the way that I view Celaena, though, because how did she not see it coming? We talk about how she's such a good assassin and so good at so many things. Arobyn was obviously in the slave trade. You broke free slaves. He beat you up, sent you to a desert. Then you come back and he's like, I have made amends. I'm gonna help you free slaves. Really? Like, you really? You think it's that much of a change of heart? And then in the end, when he comes to you, knows about your contract where you're going to kill these two big bad people who he's rivaled against and says, don't do it. Come on. Like, you didn't see it was a trap.
Yeah, and then the other guy literally, Wesley tells her it's a trap, and she
Like, he
does
kills him.
not listen.
Well, he doesn't finish his words because she knocks him out first,
Yeah,
but he says, it's not, or don't you see what's and then she knocks him out.
yeah,
And it's like, are you that big? That's why it bothered me. That's why I liked this question because I think this particular moment showed me maybe it's just that she's a 16-year-old who has a big head. Like maybe she is just super good at this and sometimes doesn't think things through. But it did make me question, are you actually as good of an assassin as you think that you are? Because how did you not see this coming?
yeah,
Or like you should have your emotions under control. Like you can't be making decisions left and right. Like if you're this trained poised assassin,
yeah. Like
which
we
really
see
bothered me.
her be really poised at different times. It's
Hmm.
and I'm like, okay, is there a mental health disorder here that we could talk about? Like, what is going on here that, um, like she goes into this rage and she doesn't think, and like that makes sense to for a teenager especially to be driven by strong emotions, for anyone really to be driven by strong emotions when your lover is murdered. um
But this happens in other areas
yeah,
too with
yeah,
her.
it's just it's a theme with her is that she, best assassin that ever existed, and yet we have yet to see her be the best assassin that ever existed.
For an assassin, she doesn't kill that many people. And also, she gets caught a lot. Like a lot.
Yeah.
So
It's like I think that Sarah J Maas wanted to write her as a morally gray character, but could not commit to being morally gray, and so has to keep being like, but actually she's good. She's just secretly good, and no one knows about it. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense because
but
you're
then
not.
sometimes she's bad too.
Yeah, like I'm not believing anything you're telling me. That's my problem. Is my believability in Celaena as a character is basically zero.
Yeah, I struggled with her because I was really starting to like her in Crown of Midnight. So in a weird way, going back to reading order, I would have almost preferred to read this book first, then go to Throne of Glass, and then Crown of Midnight because I feel like it just goes up from there. Because I felt like I started to like her a lot, and I could see that she was starting to become more level-headed and making strong connections, kind of thinking stuff through. And then I feel like we regressed
Yeah.
a little by going back. Um, but yeah, I wasn't really surprised. Speaking, so is she morally gray or not? There's the scene where Sam and Selena have like a little moment where they're grossed out by Farron, the big bad other evil assassin dude who likes to torture people. And they talk about, are we like him? Do you agree with Selena that she and Sam are different from Farron? Why or why not?
So I think the reason that she thinks they're different is because Farron takes great pleasure in making people feel a lot of pain before they die. Torture is his thing, and he is not necessarily the act of killing someone; it's the act of like putting them through really intense pain. And what we have seen of Celaena and Sam is that if they kill someone, they're doing it quick and clean. Like they're not gonna make someone suffer. But we know from Crown of Midnight that she does make people suffer. Um, if she feels like they deserve it. So I don't necessarily know because she does torture someone in Crown of Midnight. So
Oh, yeah.
um I can't remember his name, but he was the assassin that she thought killed.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, so she tortures him because she thinks he deserves it. So does that make her better than Farron? I don't know.
Yeah, this whole, I mean, we meet Sam. I like Sam, but we don't really meet Sam because we
Yeah.
know he dies. So,
We know that he likes Selena, and we know that he seems to have like good morals as far as like he doesn't want slavery to exist. But that's
yeah.
about it. That's literally about all we know about him. And
Well,
then
I
he's
feel like
really
he had,
attractive. We know
yeah, of
he's
course.
beautiful.
Um, But I feel like we had more, like, so he had the slave trade and he was like, no, he was against it. He was very, after he witnessed abuse, he was not willing to stay in that type of, like, he wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Um, I know that when Celaena was all beat up, he was like, okay, you need to make sure she's never touched again. So I don't know. I feel like there's other things, but then he also goes to like certain fighting rings and beats people up for extra cash, knowing that he's gonna win. So it's kind of like I found this scene really interesting because it's kind of like asking characters to decide or asking us, well, what do you define as right and wrong? Like putting that choice in our hands of, well, is it bad? Is it not bad? And I think anytime humanity decides what's right versus wrong, sometimes the lines are just really blurred. Um, because it's just, yeah, it just was a really interesting concept. I felt, despite not knowing Sam as well, I'm like, he's probably different, right? He's probably. But at the end of the day, I mean, they do still kill people. And they were just forced to at a young age. Maybe Farron was like, oh, I would love to be an assassin. Like maybe that was his chosen path, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Sam and Celaena were forced into it. Um, I also feel like that would be interesting to learn more about because we learn more about this Assassin's Guild and how they'll track people down. But it would kind of be cool to know more about how does it work. Do we learn more about that? Okay, so basically the things I have questions on, yeah, because that's a big point in the book where, Sam and Selena, well, Sam really wants to leave Rifthold. And Selena's like, but the Assassin's Guild. And I think that would have helped my answer to this question because I would be able to be like, well, she can't leave. She'll die, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's never really explained.
okay. So we have wannabe morally gray characters. But that leads to this question of fleeing, escaping. Maybe there's an assassin's guild that will kill you. Who knows? But why do you think Celaena was so resistant to fleeing away from Rifthold with Sam?
What I will say for this answer, without trying to give spoilers for later things, is that there's still a lot we don't know about Selena's past that is influencing her decisions here.
Okay.
Um, and I think that we don't see that in this book because it is a prequel. And I mean, we're still calling her Celaena instead of Aelin. Like, so there's still a lot of things here where like you don't know You could read this without knowing who she really is, right? Um, and I think that has a lot to play into why she's not willing to leave.
Okay. It was a very calm, cool, collected answer. I'm proud of you. Um, I don't know any of the things that you know, but I was kind of like, my first thought was just because we were talking on this weird relationship that she has with Arobyn. I was kind of like, well, an evil that you already know is sometimes better and easier than an evil that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sam and Arobyn clearly don't have the same relationship. Sam doesn't have any ties. And that's what I thought was interesting because Sam even asked Celaena, why can't you just admit that it's Arobyn that's making you want to stay? And so from that perspective, I was like, well, I think it's dumb, but I could see why she might feel like a weird, like, well, this is all I know. Like, what happens if I leave at
Mm-hmm.
this point? What happens if I leave this man at this point? Is he going to come and find me? Because I think a lot of people can make decisions out of fear of what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I wanted to know more about that decision
Mm-hmm.
because she goes to the salt mines and things change. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess I'll learn soon when she
Yeah.
becomes one.
I think it does have, like, that is a level of it, is
Hmm.
Arobyn has been grooming her and she's in an abusive relationship with him. Even if we can't define what kind of relationship it is abusive. And um, it's just hard. It's hard for, like you said, for her to leave and feel like she will be free of him, even though maybe financially she might have found her freedom. She says that she doesn't actually feel like she's free of him. Um, I also feel like she has a lot of, like, her past is tied to him in a very unique way. Um, and
Hmm.
Arobyn knows who she is.
Yeah, I know that.
So, um, yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. Of, like, who was she before this? Who was she before she became Celaena, and how much is that influencing this decision to, like, leave the country, really leave the continent.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess I'll learn more soon. But last and final question. What aspects of the book did you enjoy the most, and what would you have liked to see done differently?
Um, I if you can't tell, Selena's my least favorite character. In the series.
You seem to like her more when she's Aelin. So
Yes.
we need Aelin.
Yes. And we get more of her, like, Air of Fire is a really big character development book for her.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's hard to read her as a 16-year-old brat. Cuz that's kind of what she is in this prequel series or novellas. So what was it? What do I enjoy the most? Finishing it?
I gave you time last night to think about what you liked. I gave you a
Um,
warning.
um,
I'll let you
um.
think about it and I'll go.
Okay.
Um, so there's a couple things. For me, again, Throne of Glass, I was annoyed that I didn't see any of the training or why or how she became who she was. I appreciated the desert book because of that. Um, I am upset about what happened to Sam and the order in which I read this book series, but I did enjoy seeing a different kind of side of her where she was thinking more about someone else than herself.
Hmm.
Like she paid for his freedom, she was trying to take care of him. And so it kind of removed some of the brattiness because she was actually putting someone else. first. Um, the thing that I liked the most, specifically, I thought it was funny in a way when Celaena was scared and Sam was like, you know what I do? I just look and I say, I am Sam Corlin and I am not afraid. And I'm just imagining him like talking to himself in the mirror, like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. But then in the end, when she's going off to the prison camp, I feel like it actually showed, oh, maybe I'm not invincible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm afraid. And I'm not gonna be afraid. And I don't know why. Like, I just feel like that was my biggest issue with Celaena this whole time, that she was so big-headed and that
Mm-hmm.
she thought she could do everything. And that moment was my favorite, probably because it did show me that she's recognizing her limits, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good moment.
Yeah. I think
Did you
she gets really torn down in Air of Fire. She really learns that she is not the top dog in Air of Fire. And that helps her character development a lot and helps her not be so much of a yeah.
So I'm assuming, did you like that part? You can steal my favorite part. How'd you feel?
um I liked the part where Sam brings her the sheet music.
Oh.
Um that's a I know he's gonna die, and so I'm like very like I don't care about you. But it's a very tender moment where we see this side of her that's a little bit more soft-hearted, that makes more sense. Like we're actually getting to see that instead of being told that she's like a badass and then also cares about people. And it's just very like I need to see that. And like her having this interest in music and like caring about it a lot makes her a little bit more relatable. And just like how much that sheet music meant to her makes her a little bit more like, okay, I can see the human here versus the like so cool, poised, perfect, all of the like she's kind of a Mary Sue the rest of the time, and that's really hard for me to relate to. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that part too, even though I knew it was going to happen. That was the part where I was like, you really going to kill him? Okay, that's fine. So, but those were all the questions that we had. So, what things did you all enjoy about Assassin's Blade? What would you wish could be different? And tune back in next month when we go through Air Fire, where apparently Celaena slash Aelin gets torn down and we like her more. And on that note, thanks for watching and
like and subscribe.
bye.
Bye.